to the next topic. So we have talked about like what is debt in depth. Wow, that's a pun right there. But now let's talk a little bit about how to make debt work for you, make it a productive financial instrument. So maybe Stephanie, do you aside from like taking mortgages in the property scene, right? How else do you think like someone can make debt actually productive?
Like let's say for the property industry, right? I mean, people can buy a house and then rent it out, and then when they rent out, they earn rental income, which they can declare as additional income. So in return, they get to borrow more, whether it's for another mortgage or something else. So I find that that will help them, but provided they do declare and pay income tax for that to build their uh, credit profile. I think that's very important, and that's what the Wix consultants to ensure that their credibility is there and is being built, that they can take more and more and to build their business, for example.
You build credibility and trustworthiness so that they can further take more debt to actually grow their businesses and or invest somewhere else.
Yes.
All right. How about you, Aaron? How do you think like we can make debt work for you?
Okay, I always like to see this question from a perspective of margin of error, which is what I've illustrated earlier in this podcast. Which is if the debt instrument that I'm taking is, let's say, the interest rate is between 3 to 4%, right, and I'm borrowing it for, let's say, 10 years. Essentially I'm paying 3 to 4% annualized, right, every single year. Okay, then if let's say the investment idea I have, right, if let's say the maximum return I can get is only 8%, that gives me a margin of error of only 4%. All right, which in my opinion is not enough for me to want to borrow money to execute on the investment idea. Because I can share from personal experience, right? During the COVID crash, I had so many people come up to me and ask, right, whether or not it's a good idea for them to borrow money to buy into investments that only yield about 5%, and the borrowing cost was about 3%. All right, so when you
2%
do,
alpha.
yeah, so like, hey, look, you guys are borrowing like money at 3%, and the maximum that this thing can give you is only 5%. I say, hey, your margin of error is only 2%. Like, what's the likelihood that, if this doesn't work or your interest rate just go up, I say your return is gone already, So there's not enough cushioning for and there's not just not enough cushion for you to actually even consider that structure, because it's a stupid structure, right? I mean, common sense would dictate lah. But for some reason, these university graduates cannot do numbers. I find it disturbing. Okay. Anyway, besides that, right, I also say that the way I like to look at it is from a business perspective, and that is, if let's say my borrowing cost is about 3 to 4%, but if let's say the investment idea, right, I average a return of, let's say, 30 to 40% per year for the next 10 years, that gives me a super healthy margin. That even if it doesn't hit 30-40%, let's say I just take half, okay, if it gets me 15%, right, and then my cost is only 3 to 4%, and if the structure is fixed, right, then I'll take that bet. It's no issue for me, correct or not? Because I got a super healthy margin. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is how the way I see like how to make that work for you. And that is when you take that debt, there needs to be a super healthy margin, right, for you as the person who borrow money to actually like make sure that if shit hits the fan, that you have enough leeway for you to get out unscathed, right? And this is very problematic, because the problem is that most people, when they borrow money, they put money into very shitty amount of error. Is just not enough to cover like maximum loss. So it's very similar to when you do a business, right? When you want to bring a product to market, right? Like you want to bring a product to market. Let's say you want to do drop shipping on Shopee. You bring a product to, let's say, Singapore or Malaysia, then you sell it on Shopee, right? Do you want to bring a product where the margin is like 10%, or do you want to bring a product where the margin is 10x?
And that's a 10x, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you will prefer 10x. Obviously the 10x margin product, most likely the cost per unit is probably lesser. It's probably like, instead of like, $500 for one unit, you probably have to sell 10 times the volume. But in many cases, this is what I mean by having a margin of error. When you borrow money, you need to come from a perspective that you are borrowing money, and you have to treat yourself like a business, and you have to make sure there's enough margin and cushioning, right, in case shit hits the fan. And I find it very disturbing, right, that in the 2020 like COVID crash, so many youngsters. I'm not talking about people in their 30s, talking about people in like the early to mid 20s. They just started their first career. They're just happy, get their first paycheck, work for 1-2 years. Then the tech boom, a lot of them make like they make good money lah. So it's like it's very disturbing for me to see all these young people come up to me and then present to me amazingly shitty ideas. Uh, where the margin of error is so thin, or even worse, even if let's say the margin of error is considered big, right? But when you look at the structure of the idea, it's fundamentally flawed. Like I give it the very good example is the Luna and Terra. Nobody like actually no one factored in that there was a potential for it to go to zero.
Yeah, absolutely nobody actually.
Like me and Ryan, you and me for the longest time when we're talking about DeFi, right, in our channels, we have already like excessively told everyone, right, that there is a small chance that the DeFi project that you invest in can go to zero. I think we have made it very, very explicit, and then we get attacked and slammed for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, guys, what you want us to do? Like we say this cannot, we don't say anything also cannot. So when like, I mean, you get what I mean lah. So it's like, when you don't borrow money, right, and you invest like cash, and then you lose money, I will say that it's okay because you just lose money, you can earn back. But what is very tough, right, is that when you borrow money, and then you invest into things, right, where fundamentally, it is a flawed investment, and there lies the very thin silver lining, because most people get confused between investing and gambling. Right. And that is something that I think most people really need to take a step back, and before they borrow huge sums of money, right, to take a step back and ask themselves whether or not they're gambling or whether or not they're investing. Because investing, right, is you coming from a perspective where Steph has already described, she knows her numbers, she knows her market, she knows her competitors, and she can foresee 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whether or not what are the pitfalls, what are the ups and what are the downs, what are the sideways markets. She can see all that because she has done her due diligence. Gambling, on the other hand, is basically when Lambo syndrome.
Yeah, Lambo when.
Yeah, and then whenever you throw like questions like whether or not this can work or things like that, basically they just say, oh, fart, which is not a very good answer, I would say. So fundamentally, how do you make that work for you? Have a very healthy margin when you borrow money. Either you buy below market cost, or make sure that the margin of the interest rate, right, is so big that even if, let's say, your projected like return gets cut in half, right, it still can cover that interest that you borrow in. And most importantly, when you borrow debt, right, especially if it's a collateral debt, especially like crypto, right, this stupid like online exchanges like to offer you like Steph, you mentioned it's like 90% loan, right? In crypto, you don't borrow 90%, you can borrow up to 100 times your capital.
Wow.
So it's like you put $1, you can borrow up to $100,
Yes.
You put in $1, you can borrow up to $100. So it's like all it needs, right, is just 1% drop, your entire capital gets wiped out. And as you know, crypto move up and down. 1% is like basically 5 minutes, like 5 minutes like action. So it all stems back from, as what Ryan likes to mention, is good financial prudency. You need to really step back, do the interest rate analysis, which I really find that most people just don't do, and then also make sure that you have a healthy margin of cushioning to make sure that even if shit hits the ceiling, right, you can afford the debt, and make sure that you don't overextend. Yeah, that's the key thing.
All right.
And okay, sorry, the last one I forgot to mention. If you're very scared and it's your first time taking on debt, right, I would say just start small. Don't start so big. Yeah, start very small. Like start maybe like you can start a small credit card, like maybe 500 ringgit a month or 500 sing a month, something that's manageable. Then once you get the hang of it, once you're very comfortable, right, then you can start to scale up your debt higher and higher. But that's how I would do it, because it's not very wise for most people to get into such a huge debt position, right, without first understanding the fundamentals of debt. So you can start small. Don't have to start so big. Start small first.
All right. Yeah, it's just a matter of getting used to managing your cash flow in a sense, because with debt, right, you do have to pay off, and then you do have to factor in like next month, do I have enough money to actually pay off the credit card loan or not? Looking back at like why my father actually pushed me into buying a car with a higher purchase loan, right, it was actually to build a habit of like managing my cash flow. which I look back now, it was a good lesson, but a painful one. But nowadays, I do manage my credit card debt, and my high purchase loan debt and everything quite effectively. I do have like a couple of like credit card loan debts going on, and yeah, you just have to have like all these numbers in your head and like be prepared to pay for it next month. But I would say like credit card debt and like high purchase loan or fixed rate loans, right? These are generally more simple loans where you don't have to factor in the interest rates and all. For like the mortgage loans and all, it will be next level where you have to start thinking about like sensitivity analysis where you have to take into account whether your interest rates are going to go up or not, and if it is, then how much would it need to go up before you start to fail to pay your debt. And that would actually create a pretty bad track record down the road.
Oh,
So
great.
I would just like to ask you guys, right, to create a good track record with your debts, how do you actually want to do it? Or rather, like the topic that we're gonna go into is like creating a good track record to draw down debt. So maybe like Aaron, you might want to like just start rolling the ball here.
As what Steph has mentioned consistently in her channel, guys, pay your taxes.
Yeah, I
Like,
think Stephanie mentioned that just now, right? Like hire like a good tax consultant to do it, build the credibility.
yeah, like I think what I like about Stephanie is that she always consistently always like gives out the message that it is very important for most people to be honest about their tax filings. Because I think that as a capitalist and as a business person, right, it is very important that you pay your due taxes in due. Like, don't try and cheat the system. Don't try and circumvent the system. You can make the taxation efficient, but actually, if you actually like zoom out and look at the bigger picture, right? Most of the time, the people who are the best position to take advantage of the financial system are the people who always pay their taxes in the most transparent way possible. So I would say that the fundamental principle that most people must have is that just pay your taxes, because honestly, if you pay your taxes, basically you're displaying your income for them to see, right? So, and then if it's very consistent and then you're growing your income, the likelihood that the banks will allow you to borrow money, because you have displayed consistent like income, right? And usually when they want to lend you money, the first thing that they always ask, very simple, can you please show me your tax return, right? Because you can show them payslip, you can show them monthly payslip, you can show them yearly payslip. But the most credible source of income that a bank can get, right, is show me your income tax. Because when you do an income tax, it is very hard for you to run away, right? How much you declare your income. So I think a lot of people, right, are usually missing the big picture when they want to reduce their income tax, and that is I want to pay as little as possible, which is quite stupid in my opinion. Because honestly, if you want to really like grow and build your wealth, you will do it a lot better with the bank's help. And the way that the bank can help you is that you be honest about your tax filing and just pay your share of the tax, which I think personally I have advocated that, I think, in my entire like business career, and that is, it's best that you just pay your taxes, have a very good track record on making sure that you file your taxes due properly. And if you need a tax consultant, hire one, because they will make sure that they can display your finances the best, so that when you walk up to a bank, right, and the bank asks for documentation, you have it, and you have a track record of showing that you have that you basically have your shit together, end of the day. And of course, like building credit by itself, once you have showcased that you have income, right, through reliable sources, then usually the bank will start to give you credit facility. And the first credit facility that most people want to have is their credit card. So generally, once you have a credit card, then you have displayed that you're able to use your credit card reliably. All right, then the next thing you go is a personal loan. Right, then after your personal loan, and you have demonstrated that you know how to manage it properly, right, then generally once your income starts to go higher and higher, then you'll be in the sophisticated investor or high net worth individual level. Then once you reach that level, right, then basically the options for borrowing opens up even more, because then you basically have options for sophisticated structures which opens up to you. Banks are a lot. Put it this way, guys. If you want to build a very credible like credit rating, right, pay your taxes and make sure that you don't otang people and don't run away from creditors. End of the day, banks, they like to work with people who are honest about their finances. So the more honest you are, the better for you, you know, and I believe that is the best way to go around it lah.
All right.